Hi, I'm James with The Perfect Bass, and this is Dino Monoxelos, Senior Product Specialist over at Ampeg. So Dino, we wanted to talk about the history of Ampeg. Tell us a little bit about how it started. When was the company first started?
Well, it was officially started back in 1949.
1949.
By a gentleman by the name of Everett Hull.
Right, and tell us about
we're Ampeg.
How did it come from Ampeg?
Well,
or become Ampeg?
Back in '49, Everett was an upright bass player.
Right.
And back then there was no such thing as solid body electric basses or anything like that. So your volume was pretty much dictated by the way you set up your doghouse.
How can you get right?
And how hard you hit the darn thing.
Yeah.
He needed a way to amplify his bass. So he literally took the end pin out of his upright bass, and the end pin's the rod that adjusts the height of the bass.
Right.
And stuck a microphone on the end of it and put it back down into the bass.
Right.
And he started advertising or marketing it as the amplified peg around New York. So that's basically where the name Ampeg comes from. It was rumored that his wife was the one that said, take amplified and peg and
just turn it
the
into
word
Ampeg. So it started off with the amplified peg. Mm-hmm. What was the progression from there?
Well,
what came next?
Well, in key points in our history, I mean, there were a lot of amps there were variations of that amp throughout the years, up until 1960. When the B15 Portaflex flip top.
Yeah.
And that was designed by a gentleman by the name of Jess Oliver. It was basically a cabinet that allowed the tube amp to be flipped upside down into the cabinet for transport, and then flipped up for gigs.
Right.
So we've all seen them.
Right.
They're all over the place.
Tell us a little bit about the Portaflex. I mean, why do they call it the Portaflex?
Well, I think that was a name that just kind of dubbed the actual design of the cabinet, because if you look at an original Portaflex, there's two baffle boards. There's the baffle board that the speaker is mounted to, and then just inside there's a second baffle board that's perforated or has slots cut into it. And again, I'm not a speaker engineer, but I guess the way it was designed to work was the sound basically bounces between those two baffle boards and makes the cabinet sound a lot bigger than it actually was.
And then what year did they come out with the SVT?
This guy came out in 1969. It was, and still is today, 300 watts, all tube, coupled to, back then it was actually coupled to two 810 bottoms. That's how the amp was originally marketed, was with two 810 cabs.
So 1969 came out with the SVT series.
Yep.
And what really put it on the map?
Rolling Stones. For one band, if we had to pick one band, it was basically the Stones that came over for their U.S. tour. And all their amps were inoperable, because the way the story says is that their amps were wired for European voltage.
European voltage, yeah.
So they came over, and Ampeg was gracious enough to supply them with amps. So we sent them out with a bunch of SVTs and 810 cabs, and guitar and bass. This was their backline, was SVTs.
They played an SVT for all instruments, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
That was it.
That was the
rig.
Yeah, and by all means, I mean, I invite any guitar player to plug into this guy. Yeah, it's a kill. It's a 300 watt all tube guitar amp too. But I mean, its forte is for bass, of course. Bass players started plugging into these things, and again, keep in mind back then there was no such thing as ported cabinets or big PA systems. So if you were playing anywhere from Joe's Bar and Grill to Madison Square Garden, your volume was dictated by what came off the stage.
Right.
So the bigger, badder amp that you had, the more you were heard.
Better. Yeah.
Exactly.
You actually needed an amp this size.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. You still need it this size too today, but
you can never have too much.
You can never have too much bass.
That's right. Well, and today, you guys are now owned by Loud Technologies, which I think has been a great move.
Certainly.
You guys have the new Heritage Series line that's come out. We're really excited about Ampeg product being made right here in the States.
Yeah.
We've seen really good quality, coming out of the shop on all levels,
Cool.
And it's been a really good relationship. So we're excited to have you guys, and we appreciate you stopping by today and visiting with us and telling us a little bit about Ampeg and where it came from.
That's awesome. We're excited to have you guys as part of the family.
Thanks, Dino.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Ampeg, theperfectbass.com.